Welcome to another workshop video from Touro University. We're excited to cover today's workshop that's going to cover the pathway to ISO/IEC, Building Trusted AI Management Systems. Please welcome Bill Muskoff, who will be hosting today's workshop video.
I am Bill Muskoff, and I am a professor that you will probably wind up seeing if you wind up going to GST, because I teach some of the core courses. So this course is just a quick workshop on the ISO 42001 certification. And the reason why I'm doing this, I'll explain it in a second. Let me start by sharing out. All right, so the reason why I decided to do this class is this certification is very, very new. It started in 2023. Obviously, we know everything that's going on with AI in our personal lives, in school, at work. You know, it's across the board, right? It's taking over the world, as they say, right? Not that it hasn't been existed for a very long time. But the thing that I wanted to get across in this class is that even though you have data scientists and you have all of these experts and you have all of the, and this, by the way, this is not a course on GPUs and CPUs and all of that stuff. It's not on the technical side of ISO 42001 or on AI. This is about the kind of taking a step back and saying, all right, this is all happening in the world, but we all have businesses to run. And how do you actually make sure that you aren't exposing yourself to some of these exposures, some of these pathogens, some of these problems that you could be exposing yourself to if you're not doing the things you need to do in order to control what happens in your environment? And that's where the 42001 certification, the ISO 42001 certification comes in. It's not about knowing how to, all of the depth and the width of, neural networks and all of that technological stuff. It's about knowing that that stuff is there, sure, but how do you protect your organization and make sure you are in compliance? You aren't going to be, have a problem with some external, vector or some sort of a problem which could happen that has to do with AI, but just because you weren't aware of how it's going to affect your organization or yourself, right? So that's the reason why I decided to do this and to put on this class. So like I said, for those of you who don't know me, I am Bill Muskoff. I've been in the IT industry for many years. This picture that you see on the right is a picture that I use all the time. For those of you who have seen my classes in the past, you probably have seen this picture, but I love it. It actually was a Touro event, and it was in Madison Square Park. And that is not a backdrop. That is actually the Empire State Building. This is actually us standing, or me presenting to a group in Madison Square Park. And it was a great event. It was called Tech Tuesdays. And we used to go out on Tuesdays and do presentations to the crowd. And a lot of those people in the audience are just people that sat down to hear me talk, which is kind of cool. But you could also, if you look closely, you can also see some familiar faces like Jack Romano and Dean Herskowitz are in the audience, among others. But that was just one off event. And like I said, I just like the picture, but I have been in the IT industry for many years. I do risk management. I am a certified Agile practitioner. I have ISO 9000, ISO 20000, ISO 42001 is my current certification that I am working on, which is why I'm doing this presentation for you guys. And I do have a long history with New York City government, counterterrorism, NYPD, fire department, etc. But my current role, as was on the front sheet, is I am compliance leader for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise in their managed services organization. So being in compliance, that is why something like ISO 42001 is so important to me, right? Because the problems that you're going to run into are going to be compliance type problems if you don't understand how that affects you. Right? You don't need to understand the depth and the whole, way that AI works and all of the things that we talk about and neural networks and all of these things, but you do need to know how do you protect your organization, right? So that's where this comes from. So we're going to talk about the purpose of the ISO 42001, which I've kind of covered a little. We're going to talk about AIMS, which is actually the AI management system. We're going to talk about compliance and audit requirements, and that's where I come from, and I just realized there's a misspelling there. Sorry about that. Frameworks for responsible and ethical AI. What is a management system? Why are we using AIMS? Why is this a good idea? And then we're going to describe the value of the clauses, and then the 42,000 controls. All right, so what's going on? So AI is taking over the world, as I said. This is not a workshop on data science, machine learning, neural networks, any of that, right? We are here to talk about the 42,000 certification and how it is needed, because it provides the very first, guys, international certifiable framework for establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improving an AI management system. Now, just in the way that that's worded, you can see that you do need to know that AI is out there. You do need to have, the technical people that are able to do the work that you need them to, whether that's in ServiceNow or in SolarWinds or whatever it is that you're managing your environment with, and there are a million others, right? But you do need to make sure that all of those things are in compliance with a standard. And even, I kept this for you guys, so even Turow, if you guys didn't see, had a new policy on AI. So it's the Academic Integrity Artificial Intelligence Addendum to Data Privacy and Associated Syllabus Language Options. So this is one of those things that even Turow, not even Turow, Turow's on kind of the cutting edge of this, very, very proactive with AI management, right? So we want to make sure that every organization, including Turow, including other schools, the places that you work for, the places that you shop, right? The places that you bank, all of them are protected and have these protections in them for AI, so that we don't fall prey to some of the things that could happen if AI were to get out of control. So the 42,000 standard, this is what the book looks like. The document is intended to help organizations responsibly perform their role in respect to AI systems, to use, develop, monitor, and provide products or services that utilize AI. Now, guys, you can go to ISO and you can order this. It's 199 euros because it's based out of out of Europe. So it's in euros. You can go buy this book if you want to use it for your own purposes, but it is very important that you control it, because the way that these certifications are out there, or these documents are out there, they are very, very specifically controlled from a copyright point of view, which is why I am only showing you guys the cover, and none of this is going to be copyrighted material in this entire presentation, because there is so much control over the documentation itself. That's for a few reasons, one of them being that they want to make sure that the people that are actually implementing this are people that are actually properly trained in how to implement this, right? So what is ISO IEC that we've been talking so much about? So it is an international standard, again, the first, specifying the requirements for establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improving a management system. And we're going to talk about what a management system, what that means in just a second. It is designed for entities providing or utilizing AI-based products or services, ensuring responsible development, use of AI. So guys, this is not just for people that are building AI bots, or it's not just for OpenAI and ChatGPT, right? This is for any organization that is using, in any way, shape, or form, which means all of us are using AI, right? And whether you like it or not, you're going to have to use it at some point, whether, anyone who's being averse to using this. First of all, it's been around forever. If you've ever used Waze to drive your car, essentially, or any GPS system, essentially that's an AI bot, right? So AI is everywhere, whether you even want to pay attention to it or not, or whether it's called out as such. So what is a management system? So a management system is a combination of governance, framework, documentation, and controls. That's what the management system is. So this is not about like deep learning. This isn't about how anything actually works in the AI world. This is about kind of putting a wrapper around it and making sure that you have the right controls and the right documentation and the right framework there to make sure it is actually governed. So the governance establishes the governance of the AI systems, right? So how do you want to govern them? The framework that we use, this ISO ITIL 42000, which if any of you guys have any other ISO certification, the ISO certifications all follow kind of the same framework. They're just customized for whatever you're doing, whether that's ITSM processes or whether that's quality or whatever. And each one of those has its own certification. ISO 9000 is quality. ISO 20000 is for ITSM, IT service management. And this 42001 is for AI specifically. Then you have the documentation, and the main thing about documentation is that it exists, right? ISO is very, very big on not only showing that you do what you do, but that you have it documented that you do it that way, okay? And then you have the controls, and we'll talk about what the controls are, but you can think of it as, things that, how do you make sure you stay in the middle of the channel, right? How do you make sure that you're within those parameters? Well, the controls are how you do that, and you know whether you're going one side or the other based on whether the controls are in control or out of control, right? That's where those words come from. All right, so why do we need a dedicated AI management system? Well, first of all, AI is unique, as we know. AI is not something that we have, like I said, it's been around for forever, but in its current form and being able to use all of the generative AI and all of these things and these algorithms and this deep learning and all of these things that we're using, AI is completely unique and needs its own special way of handling it in terms of compliance, right? Especially because there can be very, very significant societal impact, bias impact, and those kinds of things, which we're going to talk about also. There is a governance gap, right? This is all brand new. We do have things like ISO 27001, which is the cybersecurity certification. We have 9001, which is the quality certification that I mentioned before. We have lots of these different certifications that are out there, but AI creates very, very specific challenges. And one of the things that is the value of having the ISO 42000 certification for your organization is that it builds trust. Companies will want to do business with you knowing that you are ethical, safe, transparent, compliant, and you're in compliance with the emerging global regulations like GDPR, HIPAA, all of those things that are required in order for, and the most recent is the EU AI Act, which we're not going to go into detail here, but you guys can imagine what that is if you don't already know. All right, so how is it structured? So we have 10 clauses, and then we have the controls. So those clauses create what I mentioned before, which is that framework. 1 through 3 are and this is a very similar framework, whether you're talking about ISO 27000, ISO 9000, et cetera. The framework is very similar, but the individual pieces to it are what are different based on whether it's AI or quality or whatever, right? So for the first three clauses, they are admin, and the admin stuff is pretty general. It talks about how your organization is set up, all of those kinds of things, not anything that's really actionable as far as IT and AI are concerned, okay? Then you get into what we call the 4 through 10. And 4 through 10 is always in any one of these standards, are always what we focus on. So context of the organization is the first thing. And the main part of context of the organization is how is leadership's responsibility involved. And then that leads into number 5, which is our leadership. We're going to talk about planning, support, operation, performance evaluation, and then improvement. But this is generally the structure of how we go about doing things in the standard. So again, we talked about 1 through 3. They are admin. They're kind of non-actionable as far as as far as the standard is concerned. They're just general things about how you are structured and your organization is set up, et cetera. And the most important things are 4 through 10. So we're going to talk about 4. First one, 4 is, the clause 4 is the context of the organization. And what you want to do in this is defining your AI landscape within your organization. So it's focus on understanding the internal and external factors that need to be addressed, right? So think of SWOT analysis for those of you guys who have worked with me in the past, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's what we're looking for as far as the context of the organization. What are we looking at as far as the strengths that we have, the weaknesses we have, the risks that we have, right? And then, of course, we're looking at the unique value and those things that we need to pay attention specifically for AI are fairness, safety, security, and transparency. That's what, in context of the organization, that's what we're specifically looking for. And we're going to talk about some of those controls when we get to that point as well. So the benefit is that it establishes an ethical and legal boundaries from the start, ensuring that AIMS is aligned with the organizational strategy and societal expectations. And that is a big part of this, guys. The societal part and the bias and those kinds of things, discrimination, are all real things that we need to be very conscious of when we're talking about AI and compliance, because we can very easily find ourselves in a very bad legal spot or compliance spot because AI did something we weren't expecting it to do that as a human you never would have done, but the AI doesn't know any better, about being, societal impact, discrimination, etc. So one of the important things we need to be worried about. All right, clause 5 is all about leadership and specifically about AI accountability. So leadership commitment, AI policy, and the organization's roles and responsibilities. We need to make sure that our AI policy is approved by top management, is supported by top management, that they are committed to it, and that it does meet all of the regulatory requirements. The benefit here is that it ensures the AI governance is not siloed, but also that it has a high level of commitment from everyone responsible. All right, clause number 6 is proactive AI risk mitigation, and specifically AI, right? But anyone who's taken any of the courses with me, whether it's one of the risk courses or one of the project management courses, you guys know what risk mitigation is about. It's about reducing the impact or the probability of a negative risk happening, right? So you want to make sure that you are focusing on the actions to address risks and opportunities and establishing your AI objectives. 2 very specific things that you want to do for AI is an AI specific risk assessment. So you could do a risk assessment on a server or a server farm, right? Let's say there's a data center, there's a whole bunch of servers, and we know that if there's a risk or if there's something specific that happens in that server farm in a traditional way, say a flood or there's a fire or something along those lines where you have damage to that site, you need to make sure that you have a backup site. You need to make sure you have redundancy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? But you have to think now, all right, wait a minute, let's think about AI specific, right? Let's think about what would that do if we didn't have access to all of the, if you're using ServiceNow to support your environment and suddenly you don't have access to your agentic AI systems that do all of your problem determination, right? That's a totally different set of risks. So you need to think along those lines, not just of the risk assessment of, hey, we have hardware down or we have software that's not working, but what if we lose the logic, the knowledge access that we need, or, we're not going to have at that moment. And then you have AI system impact assessment, which basically does the same type of things on the overall system, right? Looking at the overall impact of what could happen. And there is a very specific way of doing that called the AIIA, or the AI System Impact Assessment. All right, and the benefit here allows the government, allows the organization to properly manage AI's complex side effects, mitigating harm after deployment, and ensuring that the AI system is fair and safe. And that is, you're going to see over and over again, fair and safe are the goals here, right? Making sure that nothing is biased. And guys, when we talk about bias as far as AI is concerned, and I'm sure most of you know this, but it is things like systems seeing data that they are interpreting. And the example that's often used is when you say the word doctor, it will automatically assume that you mean male, or nurse, it will automatically assume that you mean female. Those things obviously are not fair and not, and um, are not okay, right? And it's not that they're hallucinations. There may be a reason why the AI system is seeing that or reading that way, and that's the reason why they're producing those results. But it does, it is something that we need to be aware of, and it's not. That's just one example. There's a million different ways that AI could misunderstand the way that just pure data um, is being analyzed through AI bots and whatnot. Okay. All right. Clause number 7, which is the one that's near and dear to my heart because I am in managed services and this is what I do, is support of systems. So enabling responsible AI, focus on the resources, the competence, the awareness, communication, and documented information. Unique value here is that it emphasizes the need for competence in AI systems and related risks going beyond just security training. So in my case, we do use ServiceNow, which is why I've used it in a couple of examples I've spoken about now. And our engineering team has built a lot of accesses to agentic AI through the ServiceNow platform, right? So I can now look at the history of, hard drive swaps or whatever, right? If there's a series of hard drive swaps, I can do almost instantaneous problem determination to say, hey, we have a whole bunch of these hard drive swaps. And oh, by the way, that's happening outside of my organization, right? Where you didn't have access to all that information in the past. You didn't have that data to be able to say that. But now you do. Now you can see those things and you can see them real time. So you can see that there is something that you need to be paying attention to in terms of you're servicing that environment or servicing those particular hard drives or whatever it is, right? All right, then you have operations. So operations is governing the AI life cycle. What we're going to focus on here is the operational planning, control, and managing of the AI systems life cycle. This clause is the most distinct. This is the most unique in terms of AI, requiring very specific controls over the AI systems life cycle, including design and development and controls, validation, verification, and testing, and deployment, operation, and maintenance. So these are very, very, this is the most probably inclusive term, operations, right, of the standard, making sure that you have the right controls in there, right? You are doing the right testing, you are doing the right maintenance, all of those things. And it provides a structured, auditable process that ensures AI systems are built with security, transparency, and ethical controls embedded. All right, 9 is performance evaluation, which is what we're really looking for, right? We're looking to be able to monitor our environment, make sure that we are not, there's no penetration, that's happening, that there's no cybersecurity threats are one thing, but there's also AI threats that are specific to AI. And that's why it aims to measure the performance against the AI objectives of fairness, accuracy, reliability, make sure that we are not experiencing what they call hallucinations, which is really wrong data. There is RAG, which basically says we're going to prioritize and make sure that we are not using old data, that we're using the freshest data, so that if there is, if there are emergent trends or there is data that is most common, most valuable, then we are going to be using that data. And it's very important that we make sure that we're looking at those things. Ensure that AIMS is continually monitored for effective tool for responsible AI prompting, corrective and effective tools for responsible AI, including prompting when performance metrics like bias indicators fall short, right? So making sure we see, recognize, and address if there is bias being shown, if there is a fairness problem, if there's an accuracy problem, et cetera. That's what performance evaluation is going to look at. Okay, then we have 10, which is the last clause that we're going to talk about. We do have more to talk about, but the last clause is 10, which talks about continual AI maturity. This is one of those things that you have to make sure that you're planning for, right? You need to be planning for the fact that things are going to change. and you need to be ready for what is coming forward, how do you move forward, and how do you make this better, eliminate, bias where you see it, trying to do all of the things in terms of safer AI progress and processes. And this fosters a culture of learning and resilience in the AI deployment, helping the organization adapt its governance to AI technology, regulation, and risks. Okay. So those are the 10 clauses, right? These are the actionable things. And like I said, this is not about knowing how AI works. This is about knowing how you protect your organization from how AI works, right? And it's about having the right process in place. It's about having the right protections in place, making sure that you are continually monitoring, that you are doing all of those things necessary in order to protect yourself from AI while using AI reasonably, responsibly, et cetera, right? Okay, so now we're going to go into the next part, which we say is the heart of the AI specific governance. So this is Annex A, which is one of the biggest parts of the standard. And this is where we list out not just the 10 clauses, right? But this is where we have the 38 specific controls designed to address the challenges unique to artificial intelligence. Those 38 are broken into 9 thematic domains, which is what we're going to talk about here. So the controls are broken out into policies related to AI. So these are the ethical principles and organizational accountability, also the same within internal organization. So these controls are the things that exist in order to make sure that we are within those policies. In most organizations, you have an organization who develops all of your policies and makes sure they're all documented and stored and kept up to date and all of that. And then you usually have a compliance organization that assures that we are following those processes. That is how it works in my organization, and I am the compliance side of the controls, right? So the policies are developed for the organization, and they are communicated out and agreed to by management and the executive committee and all of that. And then you have to have a group that says, all right, fine, we've said that this is what we're going to do, here are our policies. But then you need someone who's going to, or an organization that is going to check to make sure we're actually doing things that way. So that's where compliance and the policy organization work together. Okay. Then we need resources for our AI systems. So you need to make sure you are managing not just the human side and not just the technology, but both, right? So who are the humans that are actually interacting? How are we actually getting what we need from the technology, from the AI systems, and making sure that it is resourced appropriately for both policy compliance and for operations, right? So making sure you have that balance. Assessing the impacts of the AI systems. This is a core differentiator, one of the biggest things that you need to pay attention to with 42,000, because this is where we get into those, AI social bias discrimination issues where they can be, it could destroy a company's credibility, it could destroy a company's reputation if AI were to do something that was so socially unacceptable or so bias based or discriminatory without the organization ever having a human know that it was going on, right? So that's where this is a core differentiator. You need to make sure that your AI systems are being monitored for these things, that they are you're making sure that these things do not happen and that all of that is scrubbed, your data is cleaned of anything that has even leans towards any of those things, right? Then you have the AI system lifecycle, which addresses the black box nature of AI. So think about this, guys. Much of the work that AI does, the programmers don't even know how it's being done. One of the things that I talk about, some of you probably have heard the story from me before, is that when Garry Kasparov, the chess grand champion or grandmaster, when he lost to Deep Blue, which was the IBM computer, I was there that day. I happened to be there. I worked for IBM at the time. I happened to be there that day, supporting the systems in the background. It was in New York City, and I happened to be involved with what was happening that day, which was an incredible thing. And it was incredible to be involved in that particular event, that particular historical event for AI, for IT, et cetera. But one of the things that is interesting about that is that the people that programmed that Deep Blue have absolutely no idea how it beat Gary Kasparov. And there's actually stories that say that the system actually had a glitch that made a mistake, and that totally blew Kasparov's mind. And that's the reason why he didn't know how to react when Deep Blue did what it did, right? So that's the reason why he lost the matches to the computer. So that's why one of the things that we need to address is that black box nature, that nature of AI, that we don't know exactly how it's doing what it's doing. So we got to be very, very careful how we're using what it produces, right? The data for AI systems, so you need to make sure your data quality is correct for ethical reasons, among many other reasons, but one of them is for, to assure that we don't have those bias things crop up. One of the things that we can do as individuals is when you see anything AI, whether you're using Canva or Gemini or Panda or whatever you're using, Lambda, whatever it is, right? Whatever you're using, if you see anything that is particularly anything that is biased or something that you really don't agree with, you should absolutely give the feedback, because that's what the systems are looking for. They're looking for that feedback to say, hey, this is really bad, right? And in order to make sure that that doesn't propagate, that it doesn't, get festered out there. So that's one of the things that we can all do as a community is give that feedback whenever you come across something that might even be close to something like that, right? All right, information for interested parties. So you need to make sure that you are transparent and explainable to the core management requirements of what you're using AI for and how it's being used, right? There should be no hiding what is being used. Full disclosure, almost all of this presentation, you guys can imagine, I got most of the specifics for it from AI, right? I did a whole bunch of Gemini searches. I did a whole bunch of different ways of putting this together, a whole bunch of research using AI bots. Primarily, I used Gemini, but I also did some Canva searches. I also did some other, I don't even know what else, but I have a whole bunch of different information that I've used, AI certs, among others, to try to develop this presentation. So that's the kind of thing as far as transparency, right? You shouldn't hide the fact that that's what you used in order to get here. That doesn't change the fact of the value that's here and the fact that we put together this presentation and are presenting it in order to pull together very specific ideas in terms of this 1 hour workshop, right? Responsible use. So responsible use is really about human oversight, right? It's about having humans give feedback to the systems and also make sure that we are doing that proper oversight to make sure that the AI isn't doing something that we would not have done ourselves as human beings, right? That's where the human oversight comes in. And then we have third parties and customer AI usage. So this explicitly manages the risks of the supply chain, right? So you want to make sure that you have those controls in there. So those are the 9 thematic domains of the controls. There's 38 actual controls underneath these. But I don't think we need to go into all of those for today. If you were to study for 42,000, obviously you would have to study those individual controls. All right, so the summary here, we have to do risk mitigation. We have to make sure that we are doing those assessments and making sure that we aren't exposed based on what AI is capable of doing, right? There is an ethical foundation, making sure we have a formal commitment from leadership and from the organization to be fair and transparent. Building trust. So one of the values of 42,000 and having your organization certified is that you are showing that you are trustworthy in terms of what the 42,000 requires. Regulatory readiness, so you're able to be ready for audits, right? So you're able to provide the explanation for your documentation, how you're doing things, what you're doing, et cetera. And then you have the end-to-end governance over the entire AI development, testing, and monitoring lifecycle, depending on what part of it you are involved in, right? So, like I said, the whole point of this certification is not to understand everything that AI is about. It's about knowing how you build things around yourself, around your organization, to make sure that you aren't exposed to those things which could hurt your organization based on the capabilities of AI. Strategic benefits here. So enhanced trust, as we said, companies that do have this certification look very good on paper. Not to say that they're not good also, right? But it's a very good thing to have as far as demonstrating your commitment to ethical AI to your customers, investors, and your regulators. Compliance certainty provides the structure necessary to adapt and comply with forthcoming global AI laws. And that's another good point, right, guys? We don't know what's coming, right? Everyone's talking about all these new laws that are going to be put in place to protect organizations from AI and the negative effects of AI, but we don't know what they are yet. So you better get a hold of and a grasp of what your organization is doing now in order to be able to do what you need to do in the future. Competitive edge differentiates the organization as an early adopter and leader in responsible AI governance. So this is just since 2023. So this certification, which takes about a year, is not very common out there, right? So it's important to know that this is something that you could potentially use now to be an early adopter. And then the innovation with guardrails allows for faster, more confident AI development by embedding necessary controls from the start. So now I will open this up to you guys. I'm going to stop sharing. All right, guys, what questions do you have?
Good evening. Hi, it's Rhonda. I don't know, maybe you can't see me too well, but I think you did well. I had a class with you before in project management, IT. I loved your class. You went into detail. It sounds very relevant. I actually look at positions at Netflix all the time, and this is something that's really huge there. And to all the IT people, or AI, it's a good place to go to look for positions at Netflix. Um, and I didn't really have any questions. I think you were really good at what you explained. But I would make one comment to say I could see one thing. I was surprised, but not so surprised, but saw how prevalent it was when you said correcting the AI when it says something wrong. Like,
Mhm.
I think a lot of time, because I have two older kids, boys, and I see often, or even with yourself, you ask the AI something and then it gives you something wrong, and you're like, oh my God, they just don't understand me or whatever. And you get off of it instead of saying, no, that's not what I meant,
Right.
and stuff like that. And I found when I do it with Chat GPT, it would say, thank you for correcting me. Of course, it would do that pleasant thing, but then I'll say, did you mean this or whatever? So I didn't understand how important that was until you said it tonight. I just
Yeah.
proactively did that. Yeah.
No, thanks, Ron. I'm glad you got that because yeah, that's as a community, guys, this is the only way it learns, right? It's if you don't do that, if you don't correct it, it's going to think that Rhonda like that response, right? So you need to go in there and you need to check that down arrow or the thumbs down or whatever to say, no, this is not at all what I wanted. And especially if it's something that is, AI is making a discriminatory, assumption or a sexist assumption or something, make sure that you're saying, right? I mean, that's otherwise, like I said, it's going to continue to fester. And if we just all ignore it, right? Like, oh my God, I can't believe it just said that. Then it's going to keep on going. It's going to assume that was okay, right? So yeah, I thank you for pointing that out, Rhonda. Absolutely.
Yes, I appreciate you. So it was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Bodrum Islam,
Hi, Bob.
and I took your class, the project management. So, is it very important to take this class, take this certification to just to do the device management or for everything? What is the job title will be when you take this class or take this certification?
All right, good question. So this isn't like PMP, right? This isn't like getting your ITIL certification, right? It's a little bit different in that to get the certification, you don't need to work for an organization to get it, right? You can go by the book, you can go take a course, you can go get the certification just to put it on your resume.
Okay.
But Boldrum, it's a good question because this is not so much like I want to be a project manager, therefore I want my PMP. This is more like I want to be saleable in the IT, AI world. So this is one way without having to learn, neural networks or deep learning or whatever. And guys, you guys know how I feel about flashcards. I made about 600 flashcards in the last few weeks of like all sorts of stuff that I didn't know about. I'm just looking at the cards that just fell on the floor. So Ansible, anomaly detection, accuracy of generative AI, like all of these, they're just all of these things that I'm kind of putting myself through a deep dive or an immersion this semester. And I don't know if any of you are taking the AI courses, but I'm taking the AI Tarot courses right now with Beiruz Khorsandi and among other things. So now I'm a professor at Tarot, but I'm also a student, right? So I'm doing both. But this is, Bodrum, this is like an opportunity right now to put something on your resume. And by the way, Tarot is not offering this specific certification. We don't offer any certifications, right? If you want to take AI courses, you certainly can and should through Tarot, right? But this particular certification is more to say, hey, I get that AI is extremely important right now, and I get that it's not just about being a data scientist, right? We all need to be aware of the same way we don't all write viruses, but we all have to know how to implement firewalls and make sure that we have antivirus software, right? Same idea here, right? This is not about, hey, I'm going to take this course because I want to be a blah, right? I want to be a compliance leader like I am, right? Yes, it's something that's going to help me tremendously because I am a compliance leader and I need to know how this works, right? And how it should work and, what are the best practices out there. But for someone who doesn't have, isn't doing what I'm doing, it's more of I don't want to say generic, but it's more of a way of putting on your resume, hey, I am aware of what AI, compliance requirements are, right?
Thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
Makes sense because I saw that you have to be very careful about using AI because sometimes you can get biased very easily. So just so this is very important, I believe. Thank you.
And it can also, thank you, Bodrum. But it can also represent you really poorly, right? If your organization puts out something that AI, you would never put out personally, but AI has put together and put it under, I work for HPE or puts it under HPE's banner saying that Bill Muskoff, put out this, for HPE, but I don't agree with it at all, right? That's very dangerous. So you need to have, human intervention and oversight and all of these things that are part of this certification just to make sure your organization is not exposed. So good question.
Thank you. Thank you for your explanation.
Yeah, it was about the presentations you guys did on the street. If you guys still doing that around today.
We haven't done it in years, and we used to be right down the street on 23rd Street before we moved to first we moved to 34th Street, and now we're in Times Square. But that was part of the alliance with Madison Square Park because we were right there. So no, we don't do those particular presentations anymore. This is not a promotional thing for me personally, but if you go to my website, I speak at a lot of different things, including these workshops and things like that. So this isn't the first and will not be the last of me presenting this way. All right, how's everyone else doing?
Good, Professor. I have one question. how do educational, school districts, for instance, would benefit from this?
Ooh. All right, Frederick. So, yeah, I think that one of the focuses right now is on educational institutions, particularly for the young, and how do you access, right? And making sure that, and it's not just, of course there's sexual predators and there's all of those things that we need to protect our kids from, and grooming, and there's this whole thing with Roblox right now that Roblox was not doing a great job with preventing very young kids from interacting with much older adults, and some of that interaction was really creepy. So there's a lot of discussion about how you protect the schools from any kind of, external vector, right? But in particular, I think the schools, and schools like Thoreau, having an actual policy on how AI should be managed within their walls is extremely important. And everyone should be, I think that every school administrator should be required to have something like ISO 42001 to say, all right, make sure that you're paying attention to what could be a problem in your organization, right? A problem especially with access to schools. In addition to that, I would say that this is the first standard. There is no specific requirement that I know of. But Frederick, if that's where you are, if you're in, education, I would love to hear more, maybe not on this session, but more about what your thoughts are on how this could be more pervasively, incorporated into education.
I'm just going to be very brief. Where a lot of our students are using AI, misusing AI, I should say, and also their work that's given to the teachers, and it's being misused basically. And we're trying to have some sort of control over that, because there is, like you said, this ton of bias that AI does give unknowingly, and these kids are just spreading it out throughout the whole district, unfortunately. And so what, as an educator and as a person who is a tech person also, I mean, I'm trying to get my head around this to figure out how we could help the district and other districts, obviously, to be able to control this, because also I've seen this with my daughter, where she's in a university and they're having an issue with that also, tremendously, without giving any names of specific entities. So we're basically, as tech people in the education industry, we're trying to figure this out also.
First of all, I want to thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much, Professor, for another exciting presentation.